Hello, and welcome to our podcast where the dark corners are. Hello, hello. I am Vina, and I am your Dark Travels hostess. Tonight, we have something we haven't had in a long, long time.
Road trip with the Panda.
Yeah, it has been a minute.
Yeah,
Just
us
us
two.
two.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't like me.
Well, that's not accurate.
Well, the internet doesn't like me. How about that?
The internet?
The internet.
Uh,
She may be kind, but she may be cruel.
she's a giver and a taker.
Yeah.
Well, things are what they are. Now tonight you are driving. You're taking us on a road trip.
You don't like my driving, though.
No, I think you drive dangerously even more when I'm in the car, like on purpose.
I don't, though. That's the thing.
No.
I drive. The person who taught me to drive were two people, and
Whoa. The one with the most excellent record was me.
is it though?
Yeah, it is.
Is that why I got all those speeding tickets?
I think if we looked, your other parent
The other 50%er?
has more
Oh, I don't know.
seatbelts.
Oh, those are suggested.
No. You got to live by all the guidelines.
I do my best. How about that?
Okay.
That's all that matters, right? In the end, that's all that matters. I do my
Sure.
best, and I'm not hitting as much. I haven't hit anybody else. How about that?
Else,
Yeah.
who'd you hit? Oh.
Yeah, the hole in the ground.
Look out for that dip. What dip?
Bump.
Okay, so
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm driving. So there I was driving,
seatbelts on.
talking about murders.
Right.
Yeah, but today we're gonna talk about the BTK killer:
BTK. What does that mean?
bound, tie, and kill,
Bound,
or bind,
bind, torture.
torture. Yeah, torture. I got it all fucked up.
Really?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I don't know, he doesn't even matter. This guy is a piece of shit, so he doesn't even deserve his name because he made the name up himself. So
Oh, he
So-
nicknamed himself.
every time we give credit to it, that we're just kind of feeling it. It's like kind of like Voldemort
Uh-huh.
kind of thing.
Giving him power.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, either way, bind, torture, and killer.
Okay.
But he was also known as the Strangler, so that makes more sense to call him the Strangler. But he's also known as the Killer.
Okay. So
Not
Who-
to get mixed up with the BTS group.
what
or,
is that?
Or is it BTS? Yeah, the little Korean pop group.
Oh.
Starts with BT and I think it's S. No, never heard of them.
Mm.
International superstars.
I think I've seen them. I think they visited the White House not too long ago.
I believe so. Yeah. Either way, yes, the BTK killer, also known as Dennis Rader. He was born on March 9th of 1945 to Dorothy and William Rader. He was the one of four sons, and they grew up in Wichita, Kansas.
Okay.
So most of the information they have is based off of him, because all his victims except for one died. So he has to recollect, and he was very forthcoming with information at the end of the story. So everything kind of comes from him, and he was open with investigators, detectives, reporters after he was discovered and caught. So
he cooperated.
he was a pretty open book.
Okay.
So he had stated that both his parents used to work long hours and paid very little attention to him and his brothers at home, and Rader would describe the feeling of being ignored by his mother in particular and resented her for it. So
Unlike you, who has a loving mother.
Yeah.
And pays way too much attention to you.
unfortunately, so yeah, he doesn't necessarily blame the whole thing on her. But he kind of does. So he blames his childhood for being fucked up. So from a young age, Rader was into sadistic sexual fantasies about torturing trapped and helpless women. He would practice torturing and killing and hanging small animals. He would act out in sexual fantasies for voyeurism, autoerotic asphyxiation, and cross-dressing. He even often spied on female neighbors while dressed in women's clothing, including women's underwear that he would have on that he stole.
Like, he would go to the neighbor's house and steal it?
He would steal women's underwear and wear it.
So in the 50s, are we talking, was he breaking into people's houses, or was he taking it from clotheslines?
I mean, 50s, I'm sure there's multiple ways. I'm assuming he's breaking into houses because that's his MMO. His MO is he would break into houses quite frequently when he went to murder somebody.
Well, we're talking, 50s and 60s, where people were really locking their doors back then?
So, yeah, he was born in 45, and he starts developing...
He's 15 at 1960, so...
Yeah, so the 60s, 70s,
Right.
And the older he gets, the harder it gets to control those urges he has. So, but either way, yeah, he would take pictures of himself wearing women's clothes and a female mask while bound. Yeah, and the Raider kept
bound. Who bounded him?
Himself, because he would learn to tie himself up and where you choke yourself while you're. What's the best way to put that?
Choke himself, like
auto asphyxiation is autoerotic asphyxiation.
He gets off on choking, being choked
and bound,
almost dying.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
this guy's really.
Yeah, he's into it.
Is his brothers got these same problems?
You know what? I didn't look up the brothers. Brothers never really come into play. No one. It was just all solo act, as far as I know. I never saw any reports of his brothers being the same way, but I'm sure he wasn't the only fucked up cupcake in that batch. You know what I'm saying?
I think we're gonna start using that term, "fucked up cupcake" in that batch.
There's usually one that's just kind of not cooked all the way.
Well,
or something.
both of my children were perfect.
Yeah, sure. But however, so he kept all his sexual habits well hidden, and he was widely regarded in his community as normal, polite, and well mannered.
Well, they usually are.
Yeah,
how do you think? Right, exactly. How do you think they get people to trust them?
Well, that's the thing. Is like he is not. I mean, you see pictures of him. I mean, I only saw pictures of him when he was older. Really, when he's in the courtroom stuff, he's not like a handsome. I mean, this is older, so it's harder to be handsome.
Isn't he like bald?
Yeah, he's bald.
I didn't really think what's his face was all that good looking, but again, it was a different
Bundy.
Yeah, Bundy.
Yeah, Bundy was ugly. I don't know what. It was confidence. And confidence must be the drive.
Right.
But like
he's got to sell it good.
Right. He's like I think that's what it is. I think to me it is the killers and whoever they are, they know they have the power to end your life, so they have that much power over you, and so they use that fuel to boost their ego, and that's what makes them stand taller and feel bigger than everybody else.
Right. Like, I can kill you at any time.
Yeah. Like, I can end your life because I can.
One of these days, I'm going to actually look up the statistic of how many serial killers you actually come in contact with.
I think they did that.
And it's like a high number.
It's still, yeah, it's a number that you don't feel comfortable with, but it's a number that you don't ever really think about. It's just weird.
I'll have to look that up.
So anyway, after high school, he served in the United States Air Force from 1966 to 1970, and then he moved back to Wichita and married Paula Dietz on May 22nd, 1971, and they had 2 children, Carrie and Brian. He attended Butler County Community College, earning his associate degree in electronics. He enrolled in Wichita State University in 1979 with a Bachelor of Science degree majoring in Administration of Justice. And he would even get a job as an ADT installer. You know, those at home.
He gets a degree, gets some serious degrees, and then he becomes a security and installment guy?
Well, I think you actually have to be, because I think ADT is pretty high up there.
Okay.
Your home security.
But it's also a means to get into people's house, so that's probably...
Well, right. It's also the 70s and becoming the 80s, so it's a little... I don't know. I think every decade before the 90s, even the 90s, it was just like an open door policy to a lot of things. in my opinion, except for maybe like the ghetto and stuff. You know?
In the ghetto.
Yeah. I was just saying, I think a lot of people didn't take extra precaution. That's why there were so many serial killers.
You know, I actually kind of have a theory about that. And I honestly think we had a surge in the late 60s and 70s, early 80s. And I really think it's associated with World War II. The dad comes back post-traumatic stress, takes it out on the kids, and, just fucks up that generation.
Well, I think that is a thing. It affects a human being to the point where it actually becomes part of their I want to say that's kind of going far, but genetic code to a point.
Right, exactly, yes.
And then it passes that gene on
to the
offspring.
Correct.
Which just happens to be a dominant one.
Right.
Which is inherently bad because negative spreads.
I mean, that's my theory. I don't have any validation to that, but I would be curious to know if these fathers who fathered the serial killers were soldiers in World War II.
Not to say that every soldier was that, though.
No. Correct.
Right.
No. But I think exactly the trauma was handed down. And, I mean, the whole idea of dealing with post-traumatic stress now is a thing that's happening. But we're talking World War II was, 60 years ago? 80 years ago? 80 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not a word. In fact, I remember Patton. He smacked a soldier because he couldn't stop, I think, shaking, or he was so stressed out. He was hospitalized.
Yeah.
And Patton smacked him, and he got smacked down himself.
That dude was crazy.
Yes.
I mean, he got the job done.
Correct, but I mean,
he was a bit
at a cost.
Yeah, but he wanted,
he wanted to make a name for himself too. So it wasn't necessarily in the name of America. It was in the name of Patton. But
right.
I mean, we're getting sidetracked.
Yeah, sidetracked.
Okay, sorry.
Different podcast. Eh?
Fucking Patton.
Either way, so he got his degree in 79. So we're gonna back up to 74.
Okay.
So January 15th, 1974. This is the first initial victims of the BTK killer. Whereas Joseph Otero, age 38, Julie Otero, age 33, their parents, their husband and wife. Joseph Otero Jr., age 9, and Josephine Otero, age 11.
So he took on a whole family.
Correct.
God damn.
So their bodies, those 4 bodies, were discovered by the family's 3 older children who had been at school at the time of the killings. The 15-year-old at the time, Charlie Otero, quoted in a recent interview, "My dad's tongue was halfway bit off. He had a belt around his neck. My mom was beaten. Her nails were busted up. They were cold, and we tried to get the ligatures, so it's like the ropes and stuff, undone, the belt undone, and then I realized this was for nothing, and then I had to get my brother and sister out of the house."
That is so sad.
Yeah, just
I
3
mean,
kids
not
coming
only your
home.
parents dead, but
2 other siblings that are younger than you.
I mean,
the 3 of you.
The bulk of your family's gone. But I mean, to see your parents in that condition.
So what Rader had stated when he was talking about the case. So by the way, you can go to there's plenty of websites that actually keep. It's almost like when we did Dilatov Pass. There's websites like dedicated to the BTK killer. I mean, I'm sure there's like other websites dedicated to these guys with all the information, and a lot of the websites keep transcripts of the court cases.
Okay.
So you can go online, watch it, and it's on videos and everything. I mean, because when this happens, he confesses it's pretty recent. So, what his statement was, he entered the house, and by the time he entered the house, he did not realize he had not thought through this murder fully. He was still surprised that Joseph, the father, was still home, and Rader had to quickly take control of the situation by using a gun. He told the family that he was a wanted criminal and he needed food, money, and a car. Rader then ordered the family to lie face down on the ground, and he put a bag over Joseph Otero. And in order to kill Mr. Otero, he had put a cord around his neck and suffocated. He then tried to manually strangle Julie Otero, the wife, and his first attempt failed, and she passed out, and then she quickly came back to life. The second attempt killed her. Joseph Otero Jr. was the next one to die. Rader said he had suffocated and strangled him. and he pulled up a chair and watched him fully die. So basically made sure he was dead and just watched him until basically the color.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, this is just the beginning. Okay.
Well, it's one of the children. So Josephine was the last one to die. Rader forced her down into the basement and put a noose around her neck and told her she would be joining them in heaven. Rader hung her from a pipe in the basement. He left her partially undressed and then masturbated all over her legs, leaving semen on the pipe. Afterwards, Rader cleaned up and took some belongings and remembrances. He took the family car and drove it to a parking lot and left the car there and threw the keys on the roof of the store. Rader wrote a letter that had been stashed inside an engineering book in the Wichita Public Library in October of the same year, 1974, which described in detail the killing of the Otero family of January of that year.
Why? To brag?
Yeah, essentially. This guy
fucking.
So yeah, I mean, as we get into more killings, but he wants credit for this. Like he's basically proud of it, and it gets him going.
This is disgusting.
Just a few months after the Otero's murder, Catherine Bright was murdered on April 4th in 1974, same year. Rader had seen her before entering her home and considered her as one of his quote-unquote projects. The day he broke into her home from the porch door and hid in the bedroom, around 2 p.m., she arrived home, but with her brother Kevin, who was 19 years old at the time, which Rader was not expecting. Rader came rushing out of the room with a gun, pointing straight at them. He told them the same story, that he was a wanted criminal, needed a car, food, and money. He was on the way to New York. He forced the two into the bedroom and ordered Kevin to tie his sister's hands and feet. He then took Kevin into the other room and tried to tie him as well, but was not successful. Kevin got in a fight with Rader, getting very close to taking the gun from him, but Rader was able to get a good hold on the gun and shot Kevin in the head twice. It was like one in the face and one to like the head, but like
a graze.
Yeah, it's a miracle that this dude fucking got where he got it. Because after he went back to Catherine to finish his quote-unquote project, Catherine also put a big fight against Rader as he tried to strangle her. He realized that strangling was not going to work, so he started stabbing her in the abdomen multiple times. While that was happening, Kevin was able to escape. He ran a few blocks to his car and drove off in search of help. Sadly, even after multiple emergency surgeries and blood transfusions, Catherine Bright died at the age of 21. Her brother Kevin was in critical condition, but he did survive.
Is he the only survivor?
He is the only survivor.
Oh.
So in all these attacks, he's the only one who survived. I mean, the dude's like really lucky. So, I mean, he got shot twice in the face.
Did he have just to clarify, did he have 10 victims or did he have 10 attacks?
There was 10 murder victims in total.
Okay.
But only one survivor. So 10 and then one survivor.
Okay.
His next victim was 26-year-old Shirley Relford. On March 17th of 1977, so 3 years later, BTK, or Reader, drove to a neighborhood in Linwood, which is in Wichita, and he parked his car at a grocery store. At the time, he was stalking a woman who he had spotted at a bar, and after watching his target, quote-unquote, house for a while, he finally picked up the nerve to go knock on her front door. However, nobody was home at that time. By that point, he was so keyed up and excited about the prospect of attacking a new victim that he decided to troll around the area for someone else.
Some unfortunate soul.
BTK was walking along. He came across Shirley Redford's young son, Steve, who was coming back from a nearby grocery store. Upon meeting him, Rader introduced a photograph of his own wife and son and asked the boy if he knew where they were. During the short exchange, Steve politely told Rader that he did not know who they were and continued on his way home. At that point, Rader continued to watch the young boy till he saw him enter his own house. Rader approached the house and knocked on the door, and Steve and his brother opened the door, and Rader continued to state that he was a detective looking for these people in the photograph. As soon as Rader spotted his opportunity, he forced his way into the house and showed the handgun to the children. There were 3 children altogether: Steve, his brother, and his other brother. Might be a sister. I didn't write that part down. There were 3 children.
Okay.
Once inside, Rader quickly pulled down the blinds to turn off the television. At that stage, the children's mother, Shirley, came out of her bedroom and was shocked to find a strange man standing in her living room. Although Rader attempted to tie the 3 children up, he soon realized that it was proving too difficult. As a result, he put them in the bathroom with some toys and blankets to prevent the children from escaping, and he tied the door handle shut with a rope and pushed one of the beds up against the bathroom door. While Rader was holding Shirley at gunpoint, he explained to her that he had a problem with sexual fantasies and that he was going to tie her up. He also stated that he had done it before. Once the kids were locked away, he tied Shirley to the bed and put a plastic bag over her head and then strangled her to death using a rope. During his court confession in 2005, spoilers, he recalled how the 3 children were shouting and banging on the bathroom door while the crime was taking place. Following the murder, Rader cleaned up his quote-unquote tools, and he left the house as quickly as possible and walked back to his car at Dylan's parking lot at the grocery store, and the children escaped the bathroom. Some 4 minutes later, Steve tried desperately to untie his mother, but it was way too late, and Shirley was dead, and the BTK had vanished into thin air.
Those poor children.
Right next in the next room while your mom's fucking getting strangled. Yeah.
You know, I really hope that these kids, the kids that open the door, they don't think it's their fault, because it wasn't. I mean, I think I would internalize it, but it was never their fault. And I really hope they don't do that.
So, that same year, in December 1977, Rader became obsessed with stalking 25-year-old Nancy Fox. On December 8th, he cut the phone line and then broke into her modest duplex from the back door. He waited for her to get home back from her job at a jewelry store. Since she lived alone, he had no trouble surprising her in the kitchen at gunpoint. He told her that he had a sexual issue, and in order to get rid of that issue, he had to tie her up and rape her. After being allowed to partly disrobe herself in the bathroom, he ordered her into the bedroom, and he tied her up and undressed himself. He then started to strangle her. As he strangled her, he confessed to her who he really was and what he had done in his past. Her body was found later with some semen on the nightgown that was next to her. On the following day, on his way to work for the ADT alarm company, he called the local police department and said, "Yes, you will find a home homicide at 843 South Pershing, Nancy Fox. That is correct," and then left the receiver dangling. The police rushed through the house and found Nancy's body strangled to death. The police tried to replay the recording of his voice many times, but never found a match.
But did they find the telephone booth? Because they would have found fingerprints.
Everywhere he goes, he wipes down his fingerprints.
Okay.
So
he's not actually raping them. He's jacking off to them.
He's still getting off. But, I mean, he didn't do that to Catherine. But then again, he was also under a lot more pressure.
Well, the kids were banging on the door.
Well, yeah, that's Shirley. So,
I'm sorry.
But Catherine was the one with the brother.
Oh, right.
But he was under a lot more pressure and didn't have time. And he also changed him up by stabbing her instead of strangling her because he couldn't. She must have done some.
Well, strangling takes time. You know, in the movies, it's like 2 seconds and they're dead.
Right.
No. A person.
And then you have to make sure she's dead.
Right. A person without oxygen, I think 3 minutes minimum.
So, yeah, the next year, early 1978, so after he had just killed Nancy that December, Rader sent a sarcastic poem called Shirley Locks to the Wichita Eagle newspaper, which is a local paper. And after the poem was a serious letter to the local news with him stating BTK again taking responsibility for the past 7 homicides. So this is where he establishes that he's the guy.
Well, they're fucking gloating.
And the next letter was mocking the murder of Nancy Fox, entitled "Oh, Death to Nancy," which was a mimic of the song "Oh, Death," which I have not heard before. And it was just like a pop song from that time, "Oh, Death." So I don't know what that song is.
I don't know either. I've never heard of that.
But, I mean, he's sadistic enough to make a fucking song, a parody of a song. He's not fucking...
This is nothing but pure fucking evil. Absolute evil.
That's why I hate these stories, because it's like there's the tools we have today we have now because of things like this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So...
I mean, all these serial killers, leave us unsafe.
It just makes no sense. Either way, skip forward to 1985, so 7 years later.
Did he explain why there was a gap?
I think he just had his fix. He just wasn't, he wanted to lay low after he put that stuff out, stating that he took those kills. He killed 7 people in the span of a year, 3
years, I think.
3 years.
So maybe he was trying to lay low, keep it down?
Yeah, 3 years, 7 victims, and... it's probably figured that was a smart idea not to keep going for a while.
Right.
So in 85, 7 years later, he was heavily involved in this church, and once his son became older, he became a leader in the Boy Scouts.
Jesus fucking Christ.
So at this time, he's 40 years old, and he said he had planned on killing again. His next victim was 53-year-old Maureen Hedge. She was a widow and described as a kind and gentle woman. Hedge and Reader lived on the same block for over 30 years in an area of Parks. It's called Park City. On the 27th of 1985, April 27th, 1985, Reader was in the middle of a Boy Scout meeting when he stated he had a headache and needed to leave to get medicine. He left and walked to his car that was near a bowling alley. He went inside and bought a beer. He swished the beer in his mouth and spit it out, purposely spilling some on his clothing, giving onlookers the illusion that he had been drinking. He called a cab pretending to be drunk and told the driver to take him back to Park City. Once he got to Hedge's house, he saw her and assumed she was home. Well, yeah.
Was he stalking her prior? Or was this a random selection?
I'm assuming he was stalking because he's very...
He told the taxi driver where to go.
Right, so he knows where she's at.
So
they've been on the 7 block for 30 years, so he knows everything about her.
Okay, well maybe he just said tag you're it.
Right. So I mean, he already knows that she's a widow, she's alone. I mean, no one's gonna miss her at this point. But that's his thinking.
Okay.
I'm not saying that. He cut the phone line like last time and quietly opened the back door to sneak in. He realized no one was home and waited until her bedroom until he saw a car pull up into her driveway. Marine Hedge and another man walked into the house. Reader waited in the bedroom closet until 1 a.m. so that the man was gone and Marine had gone to sleep. Reader came out of the hiding and turned on the bathroom light and jumped on top of Marine, choking her to death. Once she had died, he dragged her body outside into the trunk of her car, drove to the church that he went to, and he was a trusted member. And so, since because he was a trusted member, he had the keys to the building. He put black plastic cover over the window so no one could look inside, and dragged her body into the basement of the church. He then photographed the body in multiple different poses before putting her body back in the trunk of the car and taking off. He dumped the body in a ditch along a dirt road not far from their home in Park City.
What? I mean, he's like upping everything here.
Yeah.
And what is his wife thinking? You're just a security installer. Where the fuck are you at 1 o'clock in the morning?
Well, remember, he's at the Boy Scout meeting, and then he got drunk. So now he has I was drunk. I wandered, trying to get home.
Bullshit.
I mean, I didn't look at her pictures, so she might be ugly too, though.
This is nasty.
Well, he didn't kill her. That's good. Something.
Bundy didn't kill his girlfriend. The one who sold him out. Smart girl.
Mm.
Okay.
September of 1986, Vicky. We're just going to call her Vicky because I can't say this last name.
Okay.
I don't want to totally butcher it.
Sorry, Vicky.
Sorry. Age 28 at the time, and a mother of 2, had caught Reader's eye. He would walk by her house during the day and listen to her play the piano. He thought this murder out and calling it his PJ project.
PJ? What does that stand for?
I don't remember. I didn't look it up that much. He had different project names for everyone.
Like pet names?
Kinda, yeah. By 10 a.m. on September 16th, Rader dressed up as a telephone repairman and knocked on Vicky's door. She let him into her home thinking he was going to fix the phone line, which he had cut. And then he told her he was going to tie her up. At gunpoint, he forced her into the bedroom and tied her up, but then she gave him a fight, causing cuts and scratches on Reader. He got a rope and stopped her fighting by choking her to death. After that, he took photos of the body in different positions, then left, stealing Vicky's car. Soon after that, Bill, the husband, said that he saw his own car going the opposite direction of the house but could not identify the driver. When he arrived home, he saw his 2-year-old son by himself in the living room. He searched the house for his wife and soon found her on the floor behind the bed in their bedroom. Vicky was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead after a few hours. As this was happening, Reader was disposing of the evidence and parked their car just a few blocks away from the home and went to his own home and changed his clothes.
His wife has to know something is up.
I mean, he could just see you got to go work. I'm telling you, this is a different time. So a lot of these people,
yes,
a lot of people grew up with the knowledge or the idea of this home set still.
Yes.
Just to trust your husband because he's got to go do something.
No.
Well,
You're going
yeah.
where? Where are you going to be? Okay, I'm going to call.
It's like a freaking sleepover when you're young. Whose house you going to?
That's right.
I need the parents' name and number. So between then, it takes about 5 years to the next victim. So in 1991, Rader found older women to be more vulnerable from past experiences with younger women. Rader found an older woman who was 62 and lived on her own named Dolores Davis. Davis lived a mile and a half away from Rader, where he noticed her at home. He had a very well thought out plan to get what would be his last victim. He was going camping with the Boy Scouts over the weekend. On January 19, 1991, he came up with the excuse to slip away from one of the scout meetings. He drove his car to his parents' house to change out of his scout uniform into his quote-unquote hit clothes. He then drove to the church in Park City to park his car, finish his plan on foot. Once he got to Davis's house, he waited outside until he saw that she was asleep. He broke the glass door at the back of the house with a cement block that he had found. Dolores came out of her bedroom and found Rader. He used the same line as he had almost every time, saying he needed money, a car, food, and that he was going to tie her up. He tied her up in the bedroom and strangled her to death. Rader took the body outside, put her in the trunk of her own car. He drove to a lake near Park City and hid the body and evidence under some trees. He drove the car back to Davis's house, wiped it down for fingerprints, and then left to go back to the church, where he went back and he went back to where he hid the body, put it in his trunk, and dumped the body under a bridge in a different county. Rader then went somewhere to change back into his scout uniform. Probably went back to his parents' house to change back into his scout uniform and returned back to camp. The following evening, he went back to where he left the body and took photographs of it.
Just unbelievably fucking evil.
He took time out of his. I don't know. It's like, oh, I'm gonna hang out with these kids and other scouts, leaders.
And I'm going to be killing in the
I'm
process.
going to go kill this whole lady, and I'll be right back.
Jesus fucking. There aren't any words.
Yeah, what a guy.
Okay. And his wife wasn't suspicious at all.
I mean,
No.
People just live in denial, too, though. Like, just, wow.
Well, yeah, that's a real thing. You know, women look the other way when they're molesting their kids. Women look the other way when they're, meeting prostitutes. The husbands are meeting prostitutes just for that comfort. It's sad. It's sick. It's
Just say they have someone in their life.
Or someone that provides.
Mm-hmm. So from 91 to 2004.
This is almost 3 motherfucking decades.
Yes. Literally three decades from the Otero murder. So the 30th anniversary is coming up. So 91 2004, BTK or Rader, whatever you want to call him, DTC, stayed in hiding, and no one heard from him over 10 years. But on the 30th anniversary of the Otero murder, the local newspaper, the Wichita Eagle newspaper, ran an article about the crime and BTK. A book by Robert Beatty came out about the nightmare that haunted Wichita, Kansas, a.k.a. BTK. This book and article angered Rader because he thought they were trying to tell his own story. So on March 17, 2004, Rader mailed a letter to the newspaper from an undercover name of Bill Thomas Kilman, BTK. The envelope had 3 photocopy pictures of the ones he took of Vicky and her driver's license and signed it with the same signature that had been used in the previous letters. The letter was sent to the FBI, and the investigation on BTK had started again. Rader sent another letter on May 5, 2004, to the local TV station. It was a word puzzle that contained a deeper meaning with letters and numbers. On June 9th of 2004, he left a package taped to a sign in the middle of the city, which had a gruesome description of the Otero murders and a sketch of a dead body hanging by a rope. He titled the sketch, "The Sexual Thrill Is My Bill." On June 17th of 2004, there was another package labeled BTK that was found at the Wichita Public Library. In this letter, he explained that time was running out for him and he wanted to wait for the right time for his next quote-unquote hit.
Because he's getting fucking old. He wants to glorify his disgusting deeds before he gets too old and continue.
Yeah. He's not done. He's young and spry.
And I have to say, I'm shocked that 30 years, 3 decades, and the FBI still hadn't caught him.
Well, I mean, like I stated before, they didn't know who it was. Their suspects were all dead ends. It was a cold case by this point. They had nothing to go off of. And there was no connection to any of these women.
I don't know. I find it very hard because, the man didn't mop up the motherfucking floors. This is why he probably strangled them, because there's no blood. You understand?
Right. The only one he stabbed was...
And he left her there.
Right.
He didn't pack her in anybody's trunk.
He didn't have time.
No, not only that, but I mean, the blood would have left in his trunk, would have, got his ass down the line, because in the 70s, DNA was not a thing. But I mean, he methodically thought about how strangling these people were actually the best option to prevent the blood splatter, and
So that's what he had, what he called a hit kit, he would call it. And it was his own sort of ropes and bindings that he would take with him to these killings.
right.
So he would use these items. I mean, he left some items behind, like some of, like the Orteras. They had like their own belts and stuff wrapped around them and stuff. So he left those behind, but he cleaned his own mess.
I mean, it's pretty brazen to hit a family of 4.
Right. Well, he didn't know that the husband
Dad
was going to be
gonna be there.
home, but
But I mean, he was probably using the kids as a point of vulnerability for her to cooperate. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to kill your children.
right. And I mean, he has a gun, and he probably is his first one, so he probably did it a little sloppier because he probably didn't cover his face or anything.
Correct. And then, once you see his face, you got to die.
That would be the idea. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're in 2024, or I'm sorry, we're in 2004.
Still. And then the fifth item was dropped by Rader on October 22nd of 2004 when it was found by a UPS driver. There was a collage of children with bindings drawn across their bodies and faces inside the manila envelope. It also contained an autobiography that listed false details about BTK. For example, the year he was born, the area that he lived in, to mislead the police officers. Just 8 days after Rader became the president of the church council at his church, there was a special K box with markings BTK and bomb in the back of a pickup truck. Inside the box was information on his projects that he had watched or stalked, along with even more misleading information. Also inside the box was a question asking if there was a floppy disk made, if it would be able to be traced back to the computer that he used to make it. Later, the police replied and said no, which was a lie. The next clue found was another cereal box discovered on January 25th, 2005, after he sent directions to the local TV station on where to find the box. Inside the box was a doll with a rope around its neck and tied to a pipe, simulating the murder of Josephine Otero.
The girl he hung.
In the basement, yeah. The 10th drop was a postcard that arrived on February 3rd of 2005 that was sent to the local TV station saying that he was going to send a floppy disk. So when the 11th drop was found 13 days later at the studio of the TV station, the police analyzed the floppy disk, which was drawn back to the church under the name of Dennis. They looked at the church and found the name of the president, Dennis Rader.
Good job, you.
So they drove past his home one day in an undercover vehicle and saw a familiar car from past security cameras, and it was Rader's black Jeep Cherokee. The police asked his daughter, Carrie, for a DNA sample, saying it was for a medical record. But in reality, the police were using it to match the semen found at past crime scenes left by BTK. And the Wichita Police Department found a match and finally solved the case 30 years after. And on February 25th, 2005, the Wichita Police Department surrounded Rader's car after he ate lunch at work and led him to a waiting police car in handcuffs. On the same day he was arrested, he was taken to the interrogation room, where at first he did not talk, but soon opened up and gave every little detail possible. He had given a 30-hour confession. In his confession, he talked highly about his crimes, and it was evident that he was proud of what he'd done, and he liked the publicity that he had
Garnished for himself. Yeah. These people, they were just going about their lives. They didn't deserve these fates. The women didn't deserve these fates. The children didn't deserve finding their parents dead.
Yeah, no one should have to see a husband coming home, seeing a car that he thought was his, and going to find his child in the house all alone. Well,
right.
So yeah, they search his house. They find everything. They find the original letters that he wrote, the victim's driver's license, photos that were taken, cutouts of newspaper articles.
He just handed this shit over.
And artwork that was found in the cabinet in his own office.
And his wife didn't find any of this? No.
Well, so, almost all his friends and families were devastated that they didn't know he was BTK. And they said that anyone who knew him, they wouldn't have thought or suspected him to be being able to do any of those crimes.
Yeah, so did Gacy's neighbors.
His wife, though, did an emergency divorce not long after his arrest. So, I mean,
I don't know. This guy had stuff that the cops found readily available. You didn't see it?
she was cooking. I don't know.
Something's wrong with this picture, y'all.
He must have been really good at what he was doing or something. I don't know. I don't know their love life, man.
Okay.
His case started on July 27th of 2005 for all 10 victims that he had confessed to with every detail, with no remorse, pleading guilty. The family members from each victim were able to speak at the court case. They told him how much they hate him for what they've done, or he's done. They'll never be able to see their loved ones again. And Rader was able to give a statement where he talked about approximately 30 minutes on what was supposed to be an apology, but he mainly just talked about himself.
Just a selfish, insignificant killer.
August 18th, 2005, the judge sentenced Rader to life in prison. He would not be eligible for parole until 2180.
2180.
Yeah, so
it was at 100
it was 10 lifetimes, I believe.
100 and...
From 2005 to 2180, it's 175 years.
Okay. So is he still alive?
He is still alive. He's, I believe, when I looked it up, he was 77. Let me double check those facts for you. Yeah, 77 years old.
In the state of which
he was in Kansas, but I think they moved him to a different county or a different area.
Well, if he went to a federal prison, he could be anywhere. Okay. Well,
I mean, you see pictures, it's like, because of Carrie, his daughter, they caught him and stuff, but, they didn't have a clue, I guess. I mean, there's pictures of them online where it's just normal pictures. You see pictures where she graduated from Kansas City State University, and he's standing right next to her.
Right, it's a normal life.
He looks like an average Joe.
Right.
He just looks like a dad. I mean, that one, he's kind of a serial killer look, but... But, I mean, he's just hanging out.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
plotting his next unfortunate victim.
right.
So just a reminder for everybody, we have a contest. What you simply need to do is send me an email at where the dark corners are, corners being plural, at gmail.com. Just saying, hey, love the podcast. My very first episode was whatever first episode you listened to that got you hooked on our podcast. I think I'm going to go with a t-shirt with a podcast cover on it.
You should do the polar. I like the drawing of the polar bear.
Right. So
That was really well done.
Yes. The young lady who a couple of months ago she did, if you're part of our Facebook page, you would have seen these. She did Serial Killers with Sierra. She did an amazing podcast cover with that. And then we have now gotten a podcast cover with the polar bear done. And it's a very nice,
It's really real thought out. It's really nice, really detailed.
correct podcast cover. And so I think, I don't know, I'm actually thinking about hitting her up for a couple more actually. One with kind of like
The whole group.
group, simply because when we get together and do the group ones, it would be nice to have a podcast cover that reflects that.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, so I think we're going to do a t-shirt. We're going to send, the prize would be a t-shirt to the winner. All entries need to be in before... I think I'm pulling on September 9th. Is that because the announcement will be made for the September 9th. Is that a Thursday?
I don't know. The 4th is a Sunday, so 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th a Friday, or it's a Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So. All entries need to be in at least that Sunday. Which is that the
September 4th is a Sunday.
Okay, Sunday night. Sunday night. If I haven't said this before, Sunday night is the cutoff date because we usually record Sundays. So that would be the cutoff date for the announcement of the September 8th episode. All right. But speaking of Facebook, if you are curious or interested and would like to join, send me a request. It's called Where the Dark Corners Are on Facebook. But in the meantime, if you have a place that you would someday like to see where their dark corners are, or have a specific serial killer you'd like us to cover, send me a request at wherethedarkcornersare@gmail.com. Final thoughts, Panda.
What was I gonna say? Oh, just if you're curious, like I said, go to certain websites on there. I mean, about the BTK guy, BTK killer. You can watch the trial. The trial was watched on television. I mean, you can see it for yourself. Just the video and pictures of all the stuff he sent in with the packages. I mean, all the photos are there. I mean, I wouldn't, they're not good because there's dead people on it. It's terrible, but
Yeah,
it was interesting to see how much people wanted to expose him, quote unquote, expose, because it sucks because you want to know and be informed about these kind of things, but at the same time he wins because
that's what he wanted to do in the first place.
He wants that. He wants to be known,
glorified.
Yeah,
Self-glorification.
He wants to go down knowing he was that guy.
Yeah.
So
okay, all right. So until next time, please remember, only the few can find the beauty in the darkness, which is why we hope to meet you where the dark corners are.